Arizona Territory in 1878, 3 years after the end of the Apache Wars, a time when law was still fragile and men had to stand up for honor and justice themselves. Maxwell Stone sat motionless atop his Appaloosa, hand resting on the worn grip of his Colt single-action army. From the ridge he watched the Apache gathering below, their campfires piercing the dusk like earthbound stars. Years as a frontier scout had taught him when to move and when to remain still as stone. He hadn't come looking for trouble. Trouble had a way of finding men like him. The tribal circle tightened as a warrior stripped to the waist stepped forward. Black Star, a war chief whose reputation had reached even the most isolated trading posts. Despite his 50 years, muscles rippled across his torso, testament to a lifetime of battle. Through the evening air, the chief's challenge carried clearly. "I will give my wife to whoever defeats me." Stone's jaw tightened as he saw the woman standing behind Black Star. Silent Dawn's torn deerskin dress and rigid posture told a story without words. But it was her eyes, defiant despite years of subjugation, that made Stone's decision for him. He dismounted, leading his horse down the slope. The Apache warriors turned, hands moving to weapons as the stranger approached. "I didn't come for a wife," Stone said as he entered the circle, unbuckling his gun belt. "I came to teach a man about respect." At 40, Maxwell Stone's weathered face told of hard years under unforgiving skies. Silver threaded his dark hair at the temples, and scars marked his hands and forearms. His lean frame carried not an ounce of wasted flesh. An elderly Apache, Silver Sage, the tribal counselor, spoke through a young interpreter. "White man, you step into something you don't understand. This is not your fight." Stone surprised them by responding with Apache words of respect he'd learned years ago. The old man's eyebrows lifted slightly. As Stone removed his boots and coat, a flash of memory cut through him, his mother's bruised face when he was 8, his father's drunken rage, and the Cheyenne woman who had taken him in after his parents were killed by bandits. She had taught him that true strength wasn't in domination, but protection. When a man treats a woman like property, she had told him, he makes himself smaller than he knows. Black Star circled Stone, sizing him up with contempt. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for the white man's humiliation. The rules were simple: fight until one yielded. No weapons, only strength and skill. Black Star charged like a wounded buffalo, catching Stone around the waist and driving him backward. The impact jarred through Stone's spine as they crashed to the ground, dust erupting around them. The air left his lungs in a painful rush. "You've made a mistake, white man," Black Star growled in broken English. Stone didn't waste breath responding. Instead, he tucked his knee between them, creating breathing room as the heavier man bore down. The crowd shouted in Apache, urging their leader to crush the intruder. Stone remained calm, watching for openings, conserving energy, while Black Star spent his freely. Years of survival had taught him patience in the face of stronger opponents. When Black Star hauled him up again, Stone allowed it, absorbing the punishment of an elbow to his ribs. This time, as the chief committed his full weight, Stone hooked his leg behind Black Star's ankle and twisted precisely when the older man's balance shifted. The two men rolled in the dust, tendons straining, until Stone captured the chief's wrist in a painful lock while using his knee to pin the shoulder. He applied pressure gradually, giving his opponent time to recognize the inevitable. Black Star made one final desperate attempt to power out, but Stone increased the pressure until pain flashed across the chief's face. Finally, with the dignity of a warrior who recognized defeat, Black Star slapped his free hand against the ground. Silence fell over the gathering. Even the horses stood still. Silent Dawn's heart hammered in her chest as the unthinkable unfolded before her. Stone released immediately and rose to his feet. His ribs ached with each breath, but he kept his face impassive. He didn't celebrate or gloat. There was no honor in humiliating a defeated opponent. Black Star sat in the dust for a long moment before standing. His eyes held no plea for mercy, only the hard pride of a man who would not break his word. He turned to Silent Dawn, spoke briefly in Apache, then stepped aside. As Stone pulled on his boots and coat, his mind raced. He hadn't planned beyond this moment. He hadn't wanted a prize, only to end what he saw as wrong. Silent Dawn stood frozen at the edge of the circle, torn between fear of the unknown and escape from what she knew. When Stone offered his hand to help her mount, she hesitated before taking it. Her fingers brushed his calloused palm, and she felt no grip of possession, only steady support. As they rode away from the silent tribe, a young warrior called out angrily. Silver Sage silenced him with a sharp word, but Stone caught the meaning clear enough. This wasn't over. They made camp in a sheltered wash. Stone built a small fire, brewed coffee, and heated beans in silence. Only after setting his bedroll far from hers did he finally speak. "I won't keep you against your will," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "Come morning, you can ride to Fort Defiance. Mission there takes in Apache women looking for a different life." Silent Dawn studied him across the flames. "Why did you fight for me if you do not want me?" "No person should be wagered like a horse," Stone answered simply. He pulled a small hunting knife from his boot and began whittling a piece of wood. "You're not property." "My husband gave me to you," she said, testing him. "By tribal law, I am yours now." Stone looked up, meeting her eyes directly. "Not by my law." That night, Stone slept with his back against a boulder, gun within reach, his coat his only cover. He left his blanket for Silent Dawn. Hours later, a nightmare jolted him awake, his mother's screams mixing with gunfire. His hand gripped his Colt before his eyes fully opened. Across the dying embers, he saw Silent Dawn watching him, her eyes reflecting the faint orange glow. "You fight enemies, even in sleep," she observed quietly. Stone holstered his weapon. "Old ghosts. They visit sometimes." "What ghosts?" she asked. He hesitated before answering. "My mother. She died when I was young. My father used his fists more than his words." Understanding passed between them in the darkness. By noon the next day, they reached a small hunting cabin, nestled against a pine-covered rise. Stone had built it years ago during his scouting days, a sanctuary when the world pressed too close. He checked the interior first, gun drawn, before inviting Silent Dawn inside. Dust covered everything, but the stone hearth was sound and the roof intact. As Stone kindled a fire with practiced efficiency, Silent Dawn explored the single room. Rough-hewn table, 2 chairs, shelves built into the wall, a narrow cot in one corner. That evening, as they ate by firelight, Stone noticed her constantly adjusting the torn neckline of her dress. Without comment, he took a small sewing kit from his saddlebag and began mending the fabric with neat, even stitches. "Where did you learn this?" she asked, surprised. "A Cheyenne woman who took me in after my parents died," he answered, focused on his work. "She said a man who can't mend his own clothes will always be at another's mercy." When he finished, he handed the dress back folded. Silent Dawn took it carefully, their fingers brushing briefly. For the first time since leaving the Apache circle, she felt a flicker of something beyond fear. Curiosity about this strange man who fought for her freedom, yet demanded nothing in return. Dawn broke with gunfire. Stone rolled from his bedroll to the floor, grabbing his Colt in one fluid motion. A bullet splintered the window frame above him. "Stay down!" he shouted to Silent Dawn, who had already flattened herself against the wall. 3 more shots punched through the cabin's thin walls. Stone crawled to the window, risked a quick glance outside. 2 riders, Apache by their silhouettes, were positioned behind boulders 30 yards out. "Wild Wolf," Silent Dawn whispered. "Black Star's son. He will not accept his father's defeat." Stone nodded grimly. "Back door. When I start shooting, run for the trees. There's a ravine about 50 yards east. Hide there and leave you to die?" Her voice carried surprising steel. Before Stone could argue, she picked up the small cooking pot and hurled it through the window opposite his position. As their attackers turned toward the noise, Stone fired twice in quick succession. One rider jerked backward, clutching his shoulder. Silent Dawn was already moving, grabbing Stone's rifle from beside the bed. She fired out the back window, her shot wild but enough to force the second attacker to seek cover. Stone looked at her with new respect. "You know how to shoot." "I watched my husband clean his weapons many times," she said. "I was never allowed to touch them." They held the cabin through a tense hour, conserving ammunition, taking carefully timed shots. Finally, the attackers retreated, dragging their wounded companion. Stone began reloading his weapons. "They'll be back, with more men." Silent Dawn touched his arm. "You could return me. End this." Stone's eyes hardened. "Is that what you want?" She met his gaze steadily. "No, but I don't want your death on my conscience." "I've outrun death before," he said, checking his rifle's action, "and I don't abandon people who depend on me." 2 days later, they approached Willow Creek Trading Post. Stone had insisted they needed supplies if they were going to stay ahead of Wild Wolf and his hunters. Two freight men lounged on the porch steps, chewing tobacco. Their eyes locked on Silent Dawn the moment she dismounted, their smirks carrying unmistakable meaning. Stone positioned himself between them and Silent Dawn. He didn't speak, didn't reach for his weapon, just stood with the quiet confidence of a man who knew exactly how much violence he was capable of delivering. One by one, the men looked away. Inside, the storekeeper's eyes narrowed at Silent Dawn, then at Stone. "You planning to pay for all this?" The question wasn't about money. Stone laid silver dollars on the counter. "Paid," he said simply, his tone ending further discussion. As Stone gathered supplies, flour, coffee, ammunition, blue calico fabric, a tall, weathered man in his 60s approached. "Max Stone," the man said. "Thought that was you." "James McCreedy." Stone nodded at his old friend, a former cavalry scout. McCreedy glanced at Silent Dawn, then back to Stone. "Word travels. Black Star's put a price on your head. 20 horses for you dead. 40 for bringing his wife back alive." "She's not his wife anymore," Stone replied quietly. McCreedy lowered his voice. "You've kicked a hornet's nest, Max. This territory's still fragile. Armies stretched thin, keeping peace with the tribes." "I didn't start this fight," Stone said, "but I won't back down from it." McCreedy sighed. "Never knew you too. My place is 10 miles north of here if you need sanctuary." He pressed a box of rifle cartridges into Stone's hand. "On me." As they rode away, Silent Dawn asked, "Why did those men look away? You didn't threaten them." "A man only has so many words," Stone answered. "Use them too often. They lose weight. Eyes carry enough when backed by conviction." That evening, Stone placed a small Derringer pistol on the table of the abandoned line shack they'd found. "What is this for?" Silent Dawn asked. "For you," he said. "No one should depend entirely on another for protection." Outside, he showed her how to load, aim, and fire the small gun. His instructions were patient, precise. "Don't point unless you mean to shoot. Don't shoot unless you mean to kill." Silent Dawn's first shot missed the can he'd set up by 20 feet. Her second grazed it. Her third knocked it over. "Good," he said. "Again." After the lesson, as they sat by the fire, Silent Dawn studied the small gun in her hands. "My husband would never have allowed this. He said weapons were for warriors, not women." "Your husband was wrong about many things," Stone replied. "And you?" she asked. "What else are you wrong about, Maxwell Stone?" He looked up, surprised by her challenge. "Many things, I imagine, but not about a person's right to choose their own path." "Even if that path leads back to you?" she asked quietly. Stone met her gaze across the flames. Something shifted between them, a recognition of mutual respect that neither had expected. Later that night, as Silent Dawn slept, Stone stood watch at the window. He hadn't told her about the tracks he'd spotted, at least 6 horses following their trail. Dawn found them on opposite sides of the cabin. Silent Dawn tending the fire, Stone cleaning his weapons. "Why have you never taken a wife?" she asked suddenly. Stone's hands stilled. He considered deflecting, but found himself answering honestly. "Never wanted to bring someone into a life where I might not ride back one day." "That's not the whole truth," she said with unexpected perception. Stone set the rifle aside. "My father beat my mother. Called it love. The last time, he didn't stop." His voice remained even, but his knuckles whitened. "I was 8, too small to stop him. The Cheyenne found me wandering. A woman named Morning River took me in, taught me their ways." "That's why you fought for me," Silent Dawn said. "You're still fighting for her." Stone looked up, met her eyes. "Maybe, but that doesn't make it wrong." Silent Dawn moved to sit beside him. "I was 16 when they gave me to Black Star. My family traded me for horses and rifles. I thought maybe it meant safety." Her hands trembled slightly. "Instead, I became something for him to display. When other men looked, he saw only pride in himself, not shame in what they did to me." Stone's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her speak. "You are the first man who looked at me and saw a person, not a possession," she said. Slowly, deliberately, she leaned forward and placed her hand on his cheek. "This is my choice," she whispered, and kissed him. Stone hesitated only a moment before returning the kiss, his hand rising to her waist, steady but not demanding. "I don't want to be a prize," she said against his mouth. "I want to be seen." "I see you," he answered simply, and the truth in it was stronger than any vow. They were 3 days into their journey to Fort Defiance when the attack came. Stone spotted the dust cloud first, riders approaching fast from the east, at least 10 strong. "Ride for those rocks," he ordered, pointing to a sandstone outcropping. "I'll hold them here." "No," Silent Dawn said firmly, drawing the derringer. "We stand together." There was no time to argue. They dismounted, positioning themselves behind a fallen pine. Stone unslung his rifle, checked the load. The Apache war party swept toward them like a desert storm. At their head rode Black Star himself, face painted for war, a cavalry carbine in his grip. Beside him, Wild Wolf carried a lance decorated with bloody scalps. Stone aimed carefully, fired. The lead rider tumbled from his horse. He worked the lever, fired again. Another fell. The war party split, circling to flank them. Silent Dawn fired the derringer at a warrior who ventured too close, forcing him to veer away. "Last chance to surrender the woman," Black Star called in rough English. "She's not yours to reclaim," Stone shouted back. A barrage of arrows and bullets answered him. Stone pushed Silent Dawn lower, feeling the sting as a bullet grazed his arm. For 10 minutes they held out against overwhelming odds. Stone's ammunition dwindled. Silent Dawn reloaded the derringer with shaking hands. "If they take me," she said suddenly, "kill me first." Stone looked at her sharply. "No one's taking you. No one's dying today." Suddenly, rifle fire erupted from the ridge behind them. 3 Apache warriors fell. The others pulled back in confusion. "Stone!" a familiar voice bellowed. "Get up here!" McCreedy, and he wasn't alone. 5 riders in civilian clothes provided covering fire as Stone and Silent Dawn scrambled up the slope. "Saw their dust," McCreedy explained, firing again. "Figured you could use some help." The reinforcements turned the tide. Black Star's war party retreated, carrying their wounded, leaving 3 dead behind. As the dust settled, McCreedy turned to Stone. "You always did know how to make an entrance." Stone clasped his friend's hand. I owe you. Damn right you do, McCreedy agreed. And I'm collecting. You're coming to town. That woman deserves a proper wedding, not some backwoods arrangement. Fort Defiance buzzed with rumors when they arrived. Stone's confrontation with Black Star had become the stuff of frontier legend, embellished with each retelling. Reverend Wilson greeted them cautiously at the mission house. His eyes lingered on Silent Dawn's Apache features, then on Stone's bandaged arm. I must ask plainly, the Reverend said, does this woman come of her own free will? A crowd had gathered outside, settlers, traders, and few soldiers from the fort. Some faces showed curiosity, others hostility. Ask her yourself, Stone replied. Wilson turned to Silent Dawn. Do you freely choose this man as your husband? She straightened her shoulders, facing not just the Reverend, but the onlookers beyond. I do, she answered in clear English. For the first time in my life, I choose my own path. A settler pushed forward from the crowd. She's Apache. Her people killed my brother last spring. McCreedy stepped between them. And white men killed her people. We starting a tally, Jenkins, because I guarantee you won't like the final count. The ceremony proceeded despite the tension. Without wedding rings, Stone presented her with a band he had fashioned from silver and copper. Silent Dawn gave him a beaded cord she had worn since childhood. When it came time to sign the register, Silent Dawn's hand trembled slightly as she wrote her new name, Hope Stone. By the power vested in me, Wilson pronounced, I now declare you husband and wife. As they emerged from the mission, the crowd had grown. Some faces remained hostile, but others showed grudging respect. Stone kept Hope close, his hand near his holster. McCreedy approached with two other men, former scouts who had ridden with Stone years before. We're your escort home, he announced. Consider it a wedding present. 1 year later, Maxwell and Hope stood on the porch of their expanded cabin. The roof no longer leaked. A corral held 3 horses instead of 1, and a vegetable garden flourished near the door. Word had reached them months ago that Black Star had been killed in a clash with cavalry near the Mexican border. Wild Wolf had taken leadership of a small band of renegades, but had so far left them in peace. Other settlers had gradually moved into the valley, drawn by rumors of silver. Some avoided the mixed couple, but others, particularly those who had known Stone from his scouting days, became allies and even friends. McCreedy visited regularly, bringing news and supplies from town. On this visit, he had brought an unexpected gift, a rocking chair for the porch. Figured you might need it soon, he said with a knowing glance at Hope's growing belly. As sunset painted the mountains gold, Maxwell and Hope sat together on the porch. His hand rested gently on her stomach, feeling the strong kicks of their child. I never thought I would have this, Maxwell said quietly. Have what? Hope asked. A place where I don't need to wander anymore. A reason to stay. Hope covered his hand with hers. Our child will know both worlds, she said, and will choose their own path, as we did. Not an easy road, Maxwell observed, but it's the road we chose, she replied, and we walk it together. As darkness fell, they remained on the porch, watching stars appear one by one. 2 people who had found in each other not possession, but belonging. Sometimes the bravest decisions aren't the easiest ones. True strength isn't found in controlling others, but in respecting their freedom to choose. That's a lesson every man should learn. Have you ever stood up for what's right when everyone around you stayed silent? Share your story in the comments below.